intimate conversations with today's thought leaders, change makers, and disruptors to bring you tools, strategies, and insightful perspectives on personal and business growth, revealing the humanness of success and challenge. For those that are new to the show, I'm Sally A. Curtis. I'm a content repurposing whiz, and we work with brilliant individuals to help them leverage their content to engage their audience through the power of visuals. We provide a done-for-you service that amplifies your impact because you stand out, you connect deeply with your audience, your message is heard, and you reach more people with ease. Now, you may remember these two lovely ladies, and yes, it is an absolute repeat today. What we're going to be talking about is care planning. In essence, we plan for birth, but we want to talk about let's plan for caring and for death. Now, the reason we're doing a rerun is because I messed up the sound last time, and it's a really, really important message to me for these ladies to be able to share with the world. So I would love you to re-welcome to the show both Susanne and Janice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, as we're going to be talking about today, I think it's really important and imperative that we do start to have these conversations with our families as it relates to caring for them when they're unwell, etc., as well as some of that pre-planning for, you know, the passing or their end of life. So can I ask you firstly if you can each share a little bit of your backstory to give the audience a bit of context of how you've come to sort of being on this quest and this level of service that you offer.
Okay.
Over to you, Janice.
I'm here. Oh, I'm Janice Lombardo. I am in Northeast Ohio, in the U.S., and I have been a caregiver for over 20 years. I'm also a stage 4 cancer survivor. And when I was taking care of my mom for 8 years during her cancer journey, there were so many things that I did not know. My primary focus was keeping her alive. And so we never, ever had those end-of-life discussions. That wasn't even in my purview. And when things with her health declined rapidly, there was a lot of chaos and a lot of scrambling, and planning her funeral while she was actively dying is not something I would ever recommend or want to see anyone to go through. So after she passed, I made sure that I learned what else I could do, because I still have senior family members that I care for. And so that was one of my, big things to get involved in. And becoming an end-of-life doula, I found out during the pandemic, was something I could do. So I have taken it, run with it, trailblazed with it. And here I am with Sally and Susanne today.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Over to you, Susanne.
Okay, thanks so much. So I'm Susanne White, founder of Caregiver Warrior, and I started Caregiver Warrior and my blog and website because I too was a caregiver and just found that there was so little information out there for me to lean on, and I understood that and for me, information was really important. So I made a commitment and promised that I would start helping one caregiver at a time to see if we could ease the stress of the journey. And recently I had to have brain surgery rather unexpectedly. So I really understand firsthand, personally, on the other side as a patient, which has been really good for me, how important the conversations are with family and friends about end-of-life choices and decisions and having all your ducks in a row, so to speak. It was really important to me and to give me a sense of peace before I went under, rather extensive surgery. So the importance of it was really driven home to me. So I love this conversation because I think, it just makes the patient and the caregiver so much more, it just takes so much stress off us. When we can have this conversation about, hey, what happens if?
Yeah. And it really is it's a brave conversation to have. to start that conversation, because it's one of those things that gets pushed to the side and you never quite get around to doing, let alone having the ducks all lined up. When you talked about having the ducks lined up, it's sort of like, I haven't even got the ducks in the farmyard, let alone in a room. And isn't that the case for most of us? We're just living life, we're busy. And I can only imagine the stress of, leaving my son, for example, if something was to happen to me, and, working out what he needs to do with me, let alone the business and the house and, the other family members and all those sorts of things. It would be an incredibly stressful time if it was to happen suddenly. Yes, it's still stressful if it's a little bit more elongated, if there's been if they've been unwell. But by gosh, what a great conversation to have. So I'm going to ask you, from both of your experiences, how do you find people start that difficult conversation? What are the pitfalls? What are the, opportunities? How can you bring those conversations up and start to make it easier from a family perspective or an individual perspective?
Okay. In my own family, I have come to learn that having these discussions oftentimes is a matter of, well, I've been thinking about my own situation and I've been planning my own situation, and this is what I decided, and what would you like to talk about? Maybe we need to make some things, put some things in writing, because that's the thing. You can talk, but if you don't have these information in writing so that it's a guideline to follow, then it's not as effective, because memories don't always last, because these are living documents and they can change because of a life event. I really recommend getting together over dinner, over dessert, over something where it makes it a little more normal, and you're talking about something that will someday happen. This is not a what if, this is a when. And I've also discovered that working with my own family members is a lot more challenging than working with people outside of my family, because if you have someone who is not willing to be honest and open and forthright, and they know how to shut you down, you really have no recourse. And so for some family members, I've taken it upon myself to go ahead and just start a preliminary checklist of my own so that I am not caught off guard. And I really recommend that if you are thinking about doing this, start with yourself and then work your way towards your family members, as long as there is no health crisis or anything like that. So that's how I would approach the beginning stages of it. And then if you need help, that's why I'm here.
Exactly.
I am part of that. I'm like Sweden. I don't have any way, shape, or form anything to do with it. I'm here to help you facilitate. So that's one of the things that I really like to emphasize when I meet different people who are, interested in what do I do, so that they don't feel so overwhelmed, because one of my giveaways is 10 pages long. So, and just so you're also aware, directive plans are more of the legal part of your final wishes. Final wishes are things like, where do you want to die? How do you want to be remembered? What do you want done with your body? Do you want a celebration of life or a traditional funeral? Those are final wishes. Not like your directive plans, which is your will, your powers of attorney, your living will, and those types of documentation. But all that documentation is important to have moving forward.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
I think the takeaway from that, all of that, and I'm in total agreement, is, if you have a family member that's giving you a hard time, my mom was she was actually really good at planning a lot of stuff, taking care of business. But when it came to having me being involved in helping her take care of her business, that was a little more difficult. And I think, a really good takeaway is, getting a third party or someone outside of the family, a professional that you can bring in that you don't, because there's family baggage. I mean, we all have it. No matter how good the family is, there's always opportunities for something, to be brought up from the past that perhaps, makes it more difficult to move forward. And I think that having someone who is more an objective party to people who are more stubborn and proud and, don't want to necessarily lean on somebody younger or their children is a really good point. And it helped me a little bit with my parents. Even though, as I said, my mom was great, but I was able to bring in some other professionals to sort of help them move along, and they didn't necessarily feel like it was coming from me.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you find that it actually helps? I'm sort of hearing, so I want to ask the question is, do you find bringing in that third party helps to remove the emotion, I'm going to sort of say the family emotions? Does it help to mitigate a lot of those sort of, those rises that we have when we're with family members around heated instances? It helps to, as you said, I think the word you used at one point, Janice, was normalizing it. And I think there's, you're normalizing it over food and having a conversation like you would over food, but you're
Right.
also normalizing it by bringing in that third party to sort of mitigate that heated emotion. Would that be right from your perspectives?
Absolutely. I think that it's so important to have a mediator. And as an end-of-life doula, I know the process and I can guide folks through it without the drama.
Well said.
And so the thing is that when you have a family, not everybody lives in the same town. So you might be doing this over a Zoom conversation, or you might be doing this with people and a Zoom conversation, because those are the kinds of things, in order to get everyone on the same page, you have to do. But then you also will have family members who will refuse to participate in that planning and then turn around when things are happening and expect to run the show. So that's also another part of the process, where how do you politely say, okay, well, we've all made this decision, and sorry, you can't come in at the last minute and change your mind. This is not up for debate. This is what this person wanted. This was their wish. This is their life, their decisions, and we all have to respect that.
Yeah.
I also feel too that in just this whole process, especially with my parents and my sister-in-law, that I would approach the subject multiple times. That it wasn't, it's not a cut and dry case and so often. And I think that having patience and being able to tell myself, we're not getting anywhere right now. Maybe we're moving a little forward, but drop it for now. You have to read the room a little bit. I think it's really important to be able to read the room, and I think caregivers have a tendency, to want to fix everything right away.
Yes.
And, you know what I mean? And that's wonderful, and I honor that. But we also, there's a place and a time, and it's okay, and you can, drop it and pick it up in 2 days. And I even found with myself, that I, because my personal, as a patient, I wanted everything done. I wanted everything signed. I wanted everybody to understand. I wanted to have the conversation. I wanted to have everything, and people were like, oh, you're not going to die. And I said, well, yeah, but I could. So I want to, so I learned, to just sort of back off a little bit, and maybe not have a complete conversation and resolve everything all at once. I think you kind of, take a couple bites of the enchilada and not have to eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process.
And I think I love what you've said both there around that timing thing, because I think we're all very, very similar in that we, get stuff done and we're reasonably fast paced, and we've got that, that structured approach to life as a collective. But not everybody in our life is like that. And where we might get something done in one sitting because we're going to get it done, the other people, as you've expressed, when someone says, oh, but you're not going to die, but they're not ready to have that conversation. So it is understanding other people's timings, and being appreciative of that, and just knowing, that you do have that opportunity to, drop some seeds and let them grow a little bit, and continue the conversation, and then continue the conversation till you get to the, I suppose, the final outcome. But sometimes that might take a little bit of time, and it's understanding that everybody's got a different pace to what we may have, and a different level of acceptance of what words you're going to use and how you're going to express yourself as well. Yeah, thank you. So Susanne, can I ask you a little bit too, as a little bit more from you as it relates to what happens to somebody when they've been thrown into that caregiving scenario that's become quite sudden, without a lot of the conversations along the way. So that's was part of your example, and it's obviously what you're helping caregivers understand of, looking after themselves in this process, particularly when they get thrown in the deep end, so to speak.
Yes, I mean, I recently just looked at my body of work and the things that I'm trying to say, and basically I'm realizing that I say it 50 million different ways, but my message basically is, it's okay, no matter what you're feeling, it's okay, and be kind to yourself around it. I mean, it's that's basically the message, that we're all completely different, and we're all on different paths, but it's the same journey. I mean, we're helping other people walk home, and it's just, when we come to it quickly, we want to make it all better, we want to fix everything, and we want to be perfect, and we're doing a great job, and these conversations are difficult. There's a lot of emotion around all of this stuff. It's there's a stigma to it. People are sick, and like I said, they're walking home, and we want to make it all okay, and it's it is okay, but we're going to have big feelings around it, and it's challenging. So
and it's messy.
It's messy, and it's good that it's messy, because it's allowing us to learn and grow, and communicate with people, and share things with people, and be authentic. And I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, but it's big and it's hard. So we just have to know that it's okay to have big feelings around it, and just to be really kind to ourselves and then to everybody else.
Brilliantly said. And I think that's that comes into that being kind to ourselves, is understanding that there is going to be differences. We're all different. The conversations are going to be different for all of us. The emotions are going to be different for all of us. The perspectives can be very, very different to what we believe somebody has said and written in their documentation. I remember having a conversation with my family around my father, and he had some very specific instructions, but because people had their own different feelings and emotions, they would skew it or stretch it to be over in that version, but whereas Dad's might have been over here type thing, and and it was like, well, no, where do we bring this? How do we get this to what Dad wants? Because he's actually said this, and understanding that a family member might want to skew it one way, and another family member might want to skew it the other way, because we, as my son says, it's just marketing. We can all make a sentence, skewed to our way of thinking, if we stack enough evidence and provide all those sorts of things. So we can create conversations versus starting with the real conversation of what the actual family member wanted, and understanding that yes, we might have different perspectives of how we interpret that, but let's look at the person that's actually provided the instruction and how they are wanting it interpreted. I think it's a really strong message.
And one of the other things with that message, Sally, that we need to make sure that we're listening, because when you have more than one personality trying to interpret what the individual wants, there really isn't that much to interpret. What we are needing to do is to listen. What we need to do is to take that step back and to just breathe and to let that individual answer a question. And they may change their mind 6 times, which you have to live with, because this is their documentation, it's their life. And it's so important to be able to have that, take the emotion out of it, take that emotion out of it. Plus, if you're going to have someone be your powers of attorney, or any other thing that has to do with financials, or your living will or whatever, always have a backup. Don't just leave one person in charge. Make it a team effort.
Yeah.
Because then that way it could eliminate a lot of chaos and misunderstanding. That's something that I really believe in very strongly, that you need to have more than one person be involved and a responsible party. And as far as Susanne was talking about self-care, get into some self-care rituals. Make sure that you eat well. Make sure that you get a little bit of exercise, even if it's to walk outside and do a primal scream for 3 seconds. Make sure that, you bathe and, brush your teeth. And if you need to just, sit in a chair and vegetate and do nothing for 20 minutes, do it. I was thrust into a caregiver's role for my mom. I also was raising 2 school-age children. And after a couple of years, my health was declining because of all the stress I was under trying to juggle all of that. And it's not good when you go to a doctor for help and you explain to them what you're dealing with and that you really could use some help. And all they do is look at you and say, well, you just need to stop burning the candle at both ends. Really? You're a freaking healthcare professional, and that's your sage advice to me, the overwhelmed caregiver. Not happy with that, but that is not an uncommon situation.
Yeah, very normal.
That many caregivers out there have experienced this, or patients.
Yes,
I've
and
been on the patient side as well. And
that's
Susanne,
that's the time when you sort of say, fire the doctor. I mean, it's, if it's, I have there's a very big pet peeve of mine where, if you can, because you can't always do it, if you can, though, get rid of a doctor. If you're not getting the answers you want, the support you want, the care you want, next.
I've done it.
I've had to get rid of doctors, and man, the people that replaced them were brilliant. It's amazing that you create this vacuum and this angel drops down from Earth. And again, due to the healthcare system, or due to your insurance, or due to location or geography or whatever, you can't always do that. So then there's other steps to sort of, bite the bullet and try to have a conversation with someone and say, hey, I'm not getting what I need here, But if you can, switch doctors, because you deserve to have your questions answered and to get support. They're healers. It's a business. They work for you. They are your employee. You pay them.
I think you also have to self-advocate. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and that ties into what the thought that just popped into my head, and I think that's where it's so important to have a community, which I know you've both are advocates of, around you while you're going through this stuff. In my world, to keep me on track, to shine the light on me when I'm not doing what I'm telling everybody else to do. So I think it's very important to have community to hold us accountable to ourselves, but it's also to get feedback and that insight and referrals or suggestions, or help you advocate what you need to advocate for you. So I'd love you to explore and share some of the insights around the community and how you help the community and how the community's helping you through both of your journeys.
Obviously friends. Local church was also instrumental in helping my parents provide meals at the last year of her life. I'm part of 2 different organizations that focus on businesses that care for the elderly. And so partnering with different organizations to be able to provide the service to let people know what an end-of-life doula is and what an end-of-life doula is not. I am also a certified Willow end-of-life educator, and so I can give presentations to all different kinds of groups to help educate and to make things less scary. We have not had enough education around end of life, and it is so needed. And so those are some of the things as a caregiver, as an end of life doula, that I work through within the community and get support and provide support for.
Yeah, beautiful. Susanne.
Yeah, I think the word community is a really key word, and I think you have to, and it's wonderful because education and information and research is great. So I mean, it's really wonderful that you're doing that for your community, and because anytime I can get information, I feel more powerful. I mean, education, information is power to me. It's my personality. And but getting a team around you and getting a community around you and plugging into a community. I was doing, I had therapy, I had a 12-step program, I had other caregivers that I was talking to, I had friends of my parents, I had my parents' church, I had a spiritual community I was involved in. I had everything I possibly could, because if I would pick up the phone to call someone, and they weren't there, I could switch to something else or add other people in. I mean, getting just having support and making sure you allow yourself to have that support and going for it is extremely important. And I had to learn that. I had a burnout very early on and made a phone call to someone who was a caregiver who completely changed my day and my life. You know what I mean? And I learned my lesson. I went, oh, I get it. Pick the phone up. Wow. Ask for help, which was, a new thing for me.
Yeah.
That's why caregiving was such a great experience for me, because it just made me a much better me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the most important thing you can do, and you deserve to do, it's all about deserving, is you deserve to have people around who care for you and support you. And if there are people that don't, bye.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure you surround yourself and get education and talk to people that can give you, more information, because it really does soothe your soul.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think that was for me why I obviously wanted to have up this conversation again, but why conversation and sharing wisdom to me is why I do what I do, regardless of what part of the business it is. That shared wisdom empowers us all, and that shared wisdom helps us move through life as better people with better resources. But so often, if I look at my life and different conversations I've had with different people that have had burnout in different forms, or massive amounts of overwhelm, it's generally because we've sat in isolation. We've not shared what's going on with other people, and by not sharing, because we're trying to be tough, and we're handling everything, and we think we're super people. But with that shared conversation, you do find the wisdom and the insights of other people's experiences, who else can be a resource for you. And it does lighten the load, if that's the right term. It just gives, shared wisdom. It does help to lighten the load. And that's why I think it's so important to have those educational conversations that you're doing, so we can have more empowered discussions and information and understanding of where we can go as individuals, that we don't have to be isolated. And I think my message today would be, if you're going through trying to plan something for yourself, or plan something for and caring for somebody else, you don't have to do it in isolation, either as a family unit or as the individual within that unit. I think that the ability to share, to listen, and to utilize resources becomes incredibly important for your own sanity.
Well, I don't know if any of you had this experience, but I know for me, when I was sick, people that I thought I was going to be able to count on disappeared, and other people who I only barely knew stepped up and were
Yes.
right there for me. And I was so grateful that that was the case. And I have a feeling that that's something that's more typical than
Mm,
not.
mm,
And also, just walking the caregiver's path. Unfortunately, not everyone has resources available to them, and those who are in a family unit where you might be the oldest daughter
mm,
or the only daughter. Um, Oftentimes, women, like almost 75%, according to ARP and PEW research, say that there's women are the caregivers.
mm,
And it is a matter not necessarily of free will, but it's an obligation or an
mm.
expectation that you
Expect,
end up
yeah,
doing that. And so we as women have found ways to support each other.
other,
And so, I mean, I know that there are a lot of guys and gentlemen out there who are caring for family members, and I applaud everyone who
yeah.
goes through this path. But unfortunately, it seems that women are oftentimes put into this role, and we're the ones giving more sacrifice to it rather
Mm,
than having the choice. So
mm,
I just want to throw that out there, that that is actually part of our reality at this point, and
yeah,
it really needs to change. And through education and through making sure that everybody is taught this is something that is gender neutral. You are not, just
mm,
because you're a woman, is not your job to take this on.
mm.
You should be able to share the wealth with your siblings or other family members, no matter what gender they are.
What the scenario is. Yeah, very true. And Susanne, was that a similar scenario for you, that there was an expectation? I know with, sorry, I'll just add to that. I know with my family, I remember sitting around the table as a family, very in the very early days, and one of our family members going, "Ha ha, that's going to end with you," and it, and that, yes, it was joking and all the rest of it, but the bottom line was that was the expectation, and that's normal family dynamics. But through the education that you're sharing and the conversations that we're having, we can again normalize something, so it becomes more a collective, and it's not, that's your job or that's my job and all those sorts of things. So Susanne, what was your experience around that?
I mean, I'm sort of an anomaly in that, my sister and I are extraordinarily close,
Right.
and she was an extraordinary backup for me. But
Mm,
geographically, I mean, I'm the big sister, right? So, and geographically, I was closest to my parents. So and my personality,
yeah,
I mean, not that but bam, I was right there.
yeah.
And I did pick it up, and just to speak quickly, and it is interesting who shows up and who doesn't.
Mm,
And my sister actually was having a hard time because she felt really guilty because I was doing everything, and I kept saying, she goes, I said, listen, there will be a day when I call you and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to call you and I'm going to say, get here now.
mm,
And absolutely, sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
yeah,
She was on the next plane, and she came in and she stayed for 6 weeks. And my parents died within 7 weeks of each other.
yeah.
So needless to say, it was a pretty interesting time. But so I was really lucky with that. However, and she supported me with everything I do. She never questioned anything.
Mm,
However, for me, I needed to have people on the ground
mm,
supporting me where my parents were because we were 90 miles away. So I had a team right around my parents. And I worked really hard at getting that team put together. And I made sure that I had caregivers that I could call and therapists that I could go to. You have to take care of yourself. It wasn't going to happen without me. I could see that. I could finally see when I had to make that one phone call, and somebody did help me,
mm,
that it was important for me to take the first move and pick the phone up.
yeah,
I had to get out of this. I can do it
yeah.
myself. No, nobody said I had to do it myself. I said I had to do it myself.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean, no one was saying, Suzanne, you have to do this all alone. No, I was like, I can do this. I can handle it. It's okay. I'm a bad caregiver. But no, we're not bad caregivers if we reach out and we have people around who support us.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, don't wait for the caregiver to ask you. Like, if they're stubborn like me, say, hey, I'll just bring dinner over.
Yes.
Like,
it can be
here's
so
a
simple,
lasagna.
can't it? And so,
Yeah.
graciously
Here's a
received.
lasagna. See ya. I mean, that's, what I mean? Or, hey, I have a half an hour this afternoon. I'm going to come over and hang out with mom. You want to do something? And I think that, and again, we have to teach caregivers that there's always one in the family that shows up. That's just how it is. And, you deserve to have people around you to help out.
Yeah.
But they don't know what you want if you don't ask them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well said. And I think what you've also said within there is, and through that conversation, you've actually created the opportunity to have your own self-care and your own little moments of time out, which just helps you keep going and helps you remain balanced, if that's not quite the right word, but a concept.
Yes.
From there.
Yes, it's perfectly. It is a balance, and
Yeah.
it's a balancing act. And I don't know that I don't know how about you guys, but I didn't really hit that balance that often. But it was a goal.
Yeah.
It was a goal that let's try. Because I'm an extremist. I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I'm an extremist. Everything's black and white to me.
Yeah.
So, learning to try to find that balance is a wonderful exercise.
Yeah, and that just comes back to the scenario that everything's messy. It's okay that it's messy. There's some form of organisation there. Make sure you've got some people around you, and just it's that ebb and flow of support of the other persons or persons. And of yourself, which ties into, having the appropriate plans and conversations in place, and then ties into, taking care of others and also taking care of yourself, that self-care. So I think that's both really, really important. So if I can just, because we always get close to the end and get into some really great conversations, I'd love to sort of round things out by asking you to sort of talk about perhaps your 3 top tips or top steps, or I suppose tips or ideas or suggestions and insights that you can give the audience to help make things easier for them, or what they need to be aware of.
Okay. I will go first.
Thank you.
My mantra is, we plan for birth. Let's plan for death too. And that's pretty self-explanatory. We plan for vacations and everything else, but end of life is like a big taboo. I also believe very strongly that knowledge is power. So any kind of information that you can find, whether it's through a seminar, a meeting, something that's sponsored by an assisted living or a senior community, there are programs always that are available. The Alzheimer's Association also sponsors different programs. I believe that some of them are monthly or bi-monthly. Different organizations such as senior advocacy groups, as well as in everybody's community, there is a senior group that has things that you can utilize. So whether it's a meeting or whether it's finding a checklist or any other thing that you may need help with, especially if you're the caregiver, you can go to those areas and find that help. It's more available than it used to be.
Yeah, which is beautiful. And just before I pass over to Susanne, you mentioned your checklist. So can I ask you just to talk about, or you mentioned a checklist, and I know you've got one. Can I ask you just to share a little bit about that so people know that that's available for them to access as well?
Thank you. For anyone who has listened with us today, thank you so much for coming. I have a before and after a death occurs checklist. It's actually almost 10 pages long, so it's a lot of information. And if you would like a copy, I can send it to you if you attach it to the email of myangeljanice111@gmail.com. and in the subject line, put Sally's gift. This will help you to help plan your own end of life, as well as start a conversation with loved ones. I encourage you to make copies, pass it out, get the word out, because grassroots campaigns are a wonderful thing.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Thank
and
you
one
very
other
much.
thing, I am also on an educational platform called pickmybrain.world. And if you would like to have a conversation with me, I can schedule a 30-minute session for free so that we can get you started on the process. And then everything will be taken care of and you'll be ahead of the game rather than trying to play catch up when things don't go well.
Yeah. Pre-planning. Awesome. Thank you very, very much for that. Appreciate that. Susanne.
Yes, it's great. Yes, again, my three takeaways just in general are, you can't do it alone, you can't do it immediately, and you can't do it perfectly. I mean, that's bingo. That's what it is. So, pace yourself and get educated and do research. And again, it's okay, and be kind to yourself around it. It's no matter what it is and what you feel, it's okay. It's just, big feelings. It's an intense journey, and just be kind to yourself, because you're showing up for another human being or human beings. You're giving service in the universe. That you're an angel walking on earth. So it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. And what's the best way for people to get in contact with you and find out a little bit more about your journey and your tip? You've got a book that we need to share and let people know about.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's behind me there. And Self-Care for Caregivers. And any of your favorite bookstores and on Amazon. I'm very happy with it. And the reason I love it is because it's 140 tips and it's one a page. Because caregivers can't sit with a book, really. They don't have the time for that. It's like, and there's also, which is amazing, an Audible version. So, you can just sort of listen as you're doing the ironing and cleaning up the bathroom, which was one of my favorite tasks. And I'm really pleased was honored to have written it. So pick up a copy if you'd like, and get in touch with me through my website. And I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And for those that are watching and listening later, do have a look at the ticker or the banner that goes across the bottom of our show, because you will actually see the ladies' websites across the bottom there, and you'll be able to make contact with them. As you've seen, it's a very deep conversation. It's one that's very easy to have in a little cluster of women that have been through it like this. It's not always easy to have it with your family, but it can be made easier by sharing knowledge and being armed with a little bit additional information and knowledge and wisdom, which both of these ladies have shared with you today, and actually have resources to share with you after the fact as well, to certainly make your journey a lot easier so you can look after yourself and be well prepared. I can't say thank you enough for both of you ladies for coming back again to the show. I appreciate your time that you've invested a second time around to get this very important conversation out to the world and have it as a resource for anybody that's needing it. I remember meeting Janice for the first time, and she shared your folder with me, with the end of thing, and that to me, I just love that, because I'm a folder girl with all of my plans and all of my elements in there, and I appreciate obviously what needs to go into a folder versus just a sheet of paper. So there's a lot that needs to be thought about. There's lots of discussions to have. There's lots of perspectives, but that journey you can walk hand in hand with these two lovely ladies to make it much, much easier for you. So that's my final words. I'd love you to share any final words from each of you as we get to the close of the show.
Well, Sally, thank you so much for having me again. Susanne, I'm so grateful to have been able to meet you, and I know that we will be in touch some more to possibly do some things together, because we have voices and we are ready to use them. And this is a wonderful platform. And like I said, knowledge is power. The more we talk about it, the less scary it is. And so let's normalize end of life. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, ladies. You're the best.
Thank you very, very much. And with that, we'll end the show. Thank you very, very much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of Success Secrets Exposed. And another massive, massive thank you to both of you. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week.